YNW Melly is known to the majority of the music world thanks to his stone-cold lyrics, positive character, vibrant energy, and what a lot of people call an angelic voice. His tracks Mixed Personalities and Murder on My Mind amassed a wide group of loyal followers who quickly fell in love with his music. However, only a few know that there's a dark truth that not only lies behind those two tracks, but his entire music too. You see, the rapper who we all know as YNW Melly has a split personality. He suffers from a bipolar disorder, and he's been living with at least two personalities ever since he was a kid. Melly is not only Melly, he's also Melvin, a different version of Melly, a rather sinister version. When Melvin takes over, Melly is known to get in a lot of trouble. In fact, it got him into so much trouble that he ended up catching a double-homicide charge for taking out two of his closest friends. Did Melly's split personality arise because of this horrific childhood that Melly went through? Is Melvin the only defense mechanism that Melly had growing up? Join us as we take a deeper look inside of the aftermath of YNW Melly's split personality. YNW Melly, or Jamel Maurice Demons, was born on the 1st of May, 1999. Melly was raised by his mother, Jamie Demons King, in South Florida. She gave birth when she was only 14 years old. It's uncertain who Melly's biological father is, although there is some speculation that his dad might be a rapper by the name of Dante the Gift Taylor, who claims that he's Melly's dad. Melly and his mom used to live in the apartments at Briarwood with Melly's grandmother, Audrey, for a time before moving to Gifford, Indian River County, Florida. Melly spent most of his childhood days right here. In order to sustain the two of them, Jamie started working at places like Dunkin' Donuts and Chili's. The two of them lived in a poor neighborhood. Melly grew up in poverty and had to watch his mother make ends meet. As a kid, he would have water balloon fights or chase lizards with his friend Juvie, who lived in the apartment right next to his mom's. The community in which Melly and his mother lived in during Melly's childhood was filled with people who mostly had a similar mindset, having kids and working. Little was given to them, and they had to struggle just to make it through the day. The fact that Melly got recognized in the music world was somewhat of a miracle, according to Melly. It was like God looked down and realized that they needed help. Melly always had a passion for music. Growing up, he knew he wanted to do music for a living. He grew up listening to rappers like Lil Wayne, Future, Wiz Khalifa, Chris Brown. And as a kid, he would play Chris Brown's first album every single morning on this little pink radio because that was the only CD that he had. Listening to Chris's music, he would sing and dance, trying to be just like him. Melly liked the other music genres too, especially pop. He listened to a lot of Michael Jackson, but it wasn't only the older generations that got him going. Artists like Adele and Ed Sheeran also served as an inspiration for young Melly. Being someone who could not only rap but sing too, he was bound to make it in the music industry. He had so much untapped potential inside of him. It was just a matter of time before that potential would be unlocked. He uploaded his first music tracks on SoundCloud as early as 2014 when he was only 15 years old. The first joint that he did was called 1K. Soon, the entire music world got to meet YNW Melly. Jamel added the YNW, which stands for Young N-Word World, or sometimes Young N-Word Wave, labeled to his rap name, Melly. He brought others along as well. His childhood friends Juvie, Sack Chaser, and Bortland were all carrying the same YNW moniker to their names as well. The YNW came from a song that all the YNW members made together, and it was called YNW Freestyle. Melly picked up his first gun at the age of 9. It was a .22 revolver, and he found it under his Uncle Ronnie's couch as he was playing with a fake gun toy. At that very moment, when he saw the gun shine, he picked it up and looked at his own reflection. He went outside and fired a shot from the gun he had just found. That feeling of shooting a gun changed him forever. Even though he couldn't hear for a whole week because of it, he still liked that rush. He liked it so much that he started to glorify his pistol. He took that thing with him everywhere. Even to school. Melly would carry 1 or 2 pistols with him at all times. It's kind of hard to believe, but he kept his guns in his lunchbox when he was going to school. In his interview for Rap Genius, he said, "I found my first gun when I was 9 years old. Ever since then, when I was growing up, I was so addicted to the business. I love the business."
I found my first gun when I was 9 years old. Ever since then, like growing up, I was so addicted to the business. I loved it.
Melly was getting in trouble all the time as a child. He, Juvie, and all the other boys would have fights in the back of the daycare that they used to attend since that was the only place they didn't have cameras and they could do whatever they wanted. This wasn't only child's play. Melly and Juvie got themselves in real trouble one time. Two of them started a fire right across the street where they used to live. The local authorities had to get involved with firefighters coming to the scene in order to take the fire out. They both got punished pretty heavily for what they did. Even though Melly was a troubled kid, he never found himself in a juvenile detention center, nor did he get caught by the police carrying a gun as a child, surprisingly enough. It wasn't until later in his life that he would face jail time and trouble with the authorities. In fact, it was in 2016 when he went to jail and served a 1-year sentence, facing the charges he was slammed with in 2015 for shooting into a crowd outside of Vero Beach High School. Being only 16 at the time, he went to jail as a minor. He even got his GED while he was incarcerated. The first major crime that Melly committed was the high school shooting incident that I just spoke about. On the 19th of October 2015, Melly fired a number of shots while he was close to one of the Vero Beach High School facilities. He was only 16 years old at the time when the incident happened. It all happened because one of the guys who went to Melly's high school took his gun away from him. Someone from the school even told the teachers that Melly was carrying a gun with him to school. After that, Melly was checked by the security, but he didn't pay much attention to it. He was trying to find out who took his gun so he could have his revenge. One day later, he found the people who were responsible, so he fired shots at him. Melly ditched the firearm and tried to flee from the scene. However, he was caught and arrested by the police. He was charged with 3 counts of assault with a deadly weapon and 1 count of discharging a firearm in public. He spent over a year in jail for what he did that day. But during those times in prison, he wrote "Murder on My Mind," which to this day is his most famous song. The high school shooting incident was perhaps the first time that we got to see Melly's split personality in action. From here on out, it would only get worse for Melly. You see, Melly has a personality disorder. He's been diagnosed with both bipolar disorder and with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, otherwise known as ADHD. People with bipolar disorder usually experience extreme mood swings, sometimes feeling manic and other times depressed. When having an emotional high, people with BPD can feel restless, easily agitated, racing thoughts, and perhaps most importantly, poor decision making. When going through a depression, BPD patients feel sad, empty, hopeless. Sometimes they even contemplate suicide as well. And if you ask Melly, he has what he calls mixed personalities. Melly possesses 6 different personalities in total, according to his interview with Complex. He still didn't reveal them all, but he definitely showed Melvin to the world. Melly confessed that he had suicidal thoughts like all the time. That's why the government allowed his family to help him out if they believed that he needed attention. The state of Florida allows for such thing as called the Baker Act. The Baker Act is a Florida law that enables families and loved ones to provide emergency mental health services and temporary detention for people who are impaired because of their mental illness. Although, according to Melly, Melvin is the dark and sinister person who resides inside of Melly. He only comes out at night, and Melly can't control him at all. If someone plays with Melly too much, Melvin will notice, and he don't like that at all. Mess with him, and you're a goner. Here's what Melly had to say about Melvin.
Like when the night hits, he really come, and it's like Melvin is just like once you play with Melly to a certain extent, Melvin just don't like that. Melvin on your ass, no cap. He on your ass. He don't play. Fuck with him.
When the night comes, Melvin is just like, once you play with Melly to a certain extent, Melvin just doesn't like that. Melvin on your ass, no cap. Melvin is the one who protects Melly from the wrong people. According to Melly, sometimes Melly's got murder on his mind, and that's probably how Murder on My Mind as a track came to be. Not to mention, at one of his albums called Melly vs. Melvin, there's a track where Melly talks about his disorder and it's called Mixed Personalities. Melly did this track with none other than Kanye West himself. The two of them got together in LA, and Kanye just wouldn't let Melly leave without giving him a verse. The reason why they clicked on this song is pretty simple. Both Kanye and Melly have issues with their personalities, hence mixed personalities. They're both diagnosed with bipolar disorder, and the struggle that they have to live through every day probably brought them together. Melly even said that Melvin and Ye got together when they were making that song and not Melly and Kanye. October 26, 2018, that's the day that changed YNW Melly's life forever. Coming out of the recording studio in the early morning, Melly, Portland, Sack, and Juvie all got in their car and started driving home. As they took an exit near Dykes Road, a vehicle pulled over next to them and started opening fire on their car. Melly's closest childhood friends, Juvie Thomas, Sack Chaser Williams, both died in what Melly described as a drive-by shooting. Now, this is how Melly described the whole incident, but the police came to a different conclusion. While he was releasing new music and going on tour, the Florida officials were investigating the deaths of Juvie and Sack. something didn't add up to the forensic team about the story that Bortland and Melly gave them. There was no evidence of any shooting at the place where Melly and Bortland claimed the incident happened. There were no reports of gunshots being fired either. Not only that, but a canine search did a cell phone trace but showed the incident happened in a completely different block where no other vehicles were found. They suspected foul play. Since there were bullets found on the side of the vehicle, the police believed it was Bortland and Melly who framed the whole incident, making it look like it was a drive-by when it was really them who took the lives of their closest friends. Melly's been in Broward County Jail since February 7, 2019, after being arrested on capital murder charges. He's been charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder with a firearm. In the beginning, people suspected that he might get the death penalty for what he did. However, luckily for Mel, recent developments have turned down that possibility. Now, one could even ask whether or not Melly's team of lawyers can form some sort of defense for Melly on accounts of his bipolar disorder. One, his disorder most likely happened because of something that he experienced as a kid, and most likely cannot even recall. He didn't even have a choice if there was nothing he could do to avoid stressors that caused him to develop a split personality. And 2, because if Melvin is real, and we can only assume that he is, at least for Melly, is Melly really guilty of murder then? This begs the question of identity. Melly must be held accountable in the court of law for all his actions, both Melvin's and Melly's. That would mean that Melvin isn't real in this case, since all of his responsibility is ascribed to Melly, at least while he's in court. That doesn't mean that Melly doesn't have BPD, it just means that his disorder can't get him freedom. Also, the fact that he developed it early in life also makes no difference. Mentally ill people are going to be guilty under the law as non-mentally ill people. It should be said that the presence of a mental illness can mitigate sentencing. There's a chance that his personality disorder might get his sentence reduced. If his lawyers do a good job, we might see that Melly will get out of jail soon. But that would probably mean that we'd have to go intensive therapy in order to become a free man. In any case, we're still waiting to see what his fate will be after his trial finishes. A lot of fans feel sorry for what Melly had to go through in his childhood. If his bringing up had been different, maybe none of this would be haunting him today. He had a traumatic past growing up, and you could see it affected him throughout his life. It's just unfortunate to see. Then there are those who aren't convinced that Melly is in fact sick. Some find this to be a marketing ploy, and kind of a weird one, as if Melly bonded with who he portrays himself to be in his music. Dude clearly has talent, needs to chill with the whole violent image though, because that always leads to going to jail. I don't really buy the whole split personality. Seems like an image thing, plus the way he says I am you is a very smart way of marketing yourself. Most of the big rappers today have fans who literally identify so much with that rapper that they try to mimic everything that rapper does. He knows this. As I said, the dude is clearly smart and talented. It's super worrying to see how much of his image revolves around death though. I don't know if he will beat these charges. If he does, he needs to chill with the gangster stuff. You can't be famous gangster. You either die or do a massive time throughout your life. No matter what you may have to say about Melly, there's one thing that nobody can deny. Melly is a talented artist who makes music that resonates strongly with those who listen. His tracks find a place in people's hearts, and like he likes to say, his music touches the soul. It is what he always wanted, for people to listen to his story. Perhaps all that the younger version of Melly needed was someone who would listen and care. Maybe he wouldn't have developed his split personality if he had less of a violent or disturbed childhood. However, if that were the case, who knows if YNW Melly, the rapper, would even exist today. His personality disorder really is a blessing and a curse. We sincerely hope his condition improves and that he's able to make music again real soon. Thank you for staying with us to the very end, and if you like this video, like and subscribe to our channel right here. Feel free to share any of your comments and thoughts about Melly and what his fate might look like.